Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Global Policy Dialogue, Protecting Biodiversity in Times of Crisis, exploring SDGs 14 and 15. And of course, hosted by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, also known as UN DESA. My name is Claire Forestier. I am going to be your moderator for today's event. And it's really my pleasure to be with you for the next 90 minutes to guide the discussion on how we can improve the sustainability of the oceans and the forests and get us back on track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Today's event is, of course, made possible by the UN Peace and Development Trust Fund. Now, we had an amazing discussion on Tuesday focused on data and partnerships for SDGs 4 and 5 on education and gender equality. But of course, today we're turning to SDGs 14 and 15 on the ocean and forests, and of course another dynamic interactive dialogue between experts today. They'll be sharing the latest data on life on land and life below water, and we're also going to be hearing from innovators and people on the ground already making really quite a big difference for biodiversity. Now, critically, today's event is going to preview some of the findings of the Sustainable Development Goals Report 2022, which will be launched on the 7th of July in New York during the UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. And this HLPF, as the UN calls it, they love their acronyms, don't they? It is also known as the Annual Global Review of Progress on the Goals. And of course, the conversation on the ocean could not be more timely because the global community takes up all matters of the sea next week at the UN Ocean Conference, which is taking place in Lisbon in Portugal. But before we get on to all of that, I just want to give you some tips so that you can really get the most out of today's event. So English captions are available in Zoom and on Facebook. You just click on the captioning icon on the bottom of your screens. And then live captions are also available in the UN's 6 official languages. So that's Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian and Spanish. That's on a separate website. You just need a little case-sensitive link to access this website, and that is on your screens hopefully now. So it's bit.ly/June captions. Now, once you're on the website, of course, you just select the language that you want from the drop-down menu, and this link is also written in the frame of the screen on the bottom. And of course, you will have seen by now that this event is being provided in American Sign Language as well. And we really encourage you, spread the word on what you hear today on social media using the hashtag Global Goals. And of course, we really want you to get involved in the discussion as well. So send us your questions and also vote up other people's questions using the interactive Slido tool. And to see all these polls and to ask your questions on Slido, you just scan the QR code on the screen. But if you prefer, you can just go to slido.com and you just insert the hashtag Global Goals code, which is displayed on the bottom right of your screen. Okay, so that's the housekeeping done. And I now want to get a poll of your opinions on the big topics today. So first poll, what to you is the biggest reason to protect biodiversity? To ensure the resilience of ecosystems, to trap carbon dioxide, to mitigate climate change, or to protect food, safe water, and medicine for humans, or is it something else altogether? So if you head over to Slido now and vote, we will watch a short video from UN DESA on the need to protect our ocean, and then we'll come back to the poll.
We all depend on the ocean for our survival. The ocean provides most of the oxygen we breathe. It regulates our climate. It absorbs carbon dioxide emissions and helps us in our fight against climate change. It provides millions of people with jobs and livelihoods. And it is the home of vast marine life and biodiversity. But because of human activity, our ocean is in grave danger.
We all impacting the ocean, and we have no time to lose. And our ocean and our future will not wait anymore.
When we think about climate change, we must think about the ocean because it is our biggest ally in fighting climate change.
what I'm concerned about now isn't really the state of our ocean today. It's the state of humanity's interactions with it. We need to be aware of the immense role that the ocean plays in supporting life systems.
UN Ocean Conference to be convened in Lisbon in June is a historic opportunity to turn the tide, to scale up ocean action, forge partnerships, and make new commitments.
I hope to see action from young communities, young people that start their own initiatives that provide the working solutions that showcase and can actually solve this crisis.
I hope that the UN Ocean Conference this summer is going to remind the global community how important the ocean is.
We need all hands on deck to navigate on our way towards a healthy ocean. To save the ocean for current and future generations.
Claire, you're muted. You're muted, Claire. Claire.
Hi, so I was muted. I do apologise. There I go. Didn't want to interrupt the video with my clicking here, and then of course I was muted. But I just wanted to say we're going over to the polls now to see what you guys have been saying, and of course most people to ensure the resilience of ecosystems. We've got 68% with that. So let's see what comes out of today's conversations, and obviously we will be taking that as well to the high level political forum, some of this information. So thank you all very much for being with us. And now we're going to get started with our very first panel of experts. They're going to share with us some of the latest data that they have been discovering on the state of our forests and ocean. And of course, as we work towards making the SDGs our reality, it is really important to measure this progress and hold ourselves accountable. So I will introducing them in a minute, and whilst I do that, I want you guys to be filling in this poll. So this is the next poll. What are your views on this? What do you think is the biggest challenge that we have to protecting biodiversity? Is it lack of funds? Is it lack of political will or corporate oversight? Is it apathy or something else? So you guys go and fill in that poll, and I will introduce our three speakers for this panel. So first of all, we have Yongyi Min, who is the chief of the SDG monitoring section in the statistics division of UN DESA. She's also the lead author of the Sustainable Development Goals Report 2022. And joining Yongyi is Tomasz Juszek, who is the Forest Affairs Officer with the UN Forum on Forests. Welcome to you too. And Lucy Mulenkai, who's the Executive Director of the Indigenous Information Network and a participant at the SDG 15 expert group meeting that was held recently, also in support of the upcoming high-level political forum. Okay, so we are going to go back, quickly check what you guys said in the poll. So the question was, oh, I'm not getting it up on my polls. Hopefully it is coming up on the screen so that you can see it. But what we will do is go back now and introduce, well, start, to be fair, start. Yongyi, welcome. I'm going to hand the floor over to you to share some of the key findings from the upcoming Sustainable Development Goals Report 2022. What does the latest data on SDG 14 and 15 show, and how is progress on these goals actually interlinked?
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you again for inviting me to this UN Global Policy Dialogue on protecting biodiversity in times of crisis. It's my honor to be part of this panel. So first, I would like to give you some reality check on life underwater and life on land from the upcoming SDG report 2022. So on oceans, more than 3 million people rely on the ocean for their livelihoods, and over 80% of the world merchandise trade is carried out by sea. So ocean contribute to poverty eradication, sustainable economic growth, and food security. However, our planet's largest ecosystem is endangered. So the ocean absorbs 1/4 of annual global CO2 emission. However, the rising CO2 emission are driving ocean warming and acidification, threatening marine life and ecosystem service. So one example is between 2009 and 2018, we lost about 14% coral reef, which are called the rainforests of the sea because of the extraordinary biodiversity they support. Ocean acidification also decreases the ability of the ocean to mitigate climate change. The number of dead zones worldwide, which is an area of water that lack sufficient oxygen to support marine life, increased from around 400 in 2008 to about 700 in 2019. So dead zones are caused by coastal eutrophications. The rapid growing consumption of fish, which increased about more than 100% in the past 3 decades, along with inadequate public policy for managing this sector, have led to the depletion of fish stocks, with more than 1/3 of fish stock being overfished, up from only 10% 50 years ago. So we have managed to protect about 8% of the global coastal water and ocean of 2021, but this is still below the 10% target set for actually 2021 years ago. On land, the world's forest area continues to decline, but at a slightly slower rate than in previous decades. So each year, about 10 million hectares of forest are being destroyed. This is the same size area of Iceland. So agricultural expansion is driving about 90% of global deforestation. Significant loss were observed in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa. The risk of species extinction is increasing at a rate unprecedented in human history. The Red List Index, which measures the overall extinction risk of species, revealed a deterioration of 9.2% between 2000 and 2022. So around 40,000 species are documented to be at risk of extinction over the coming decade. The biggest linkage between these two goals are the human activities and our unsustainable patterns of consumption and production. So they're the root cause of the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity, and loss and pollution. I think I hear an echo, so I'm not sure. So I'll continue. So in 2021, estimate 17 million metric tons of plastic entered the world's ocean, making up 85% marine litter. These plastic wastes are choking, strangling, and drowning marine wildlife. The volume plastic pollution enters the ocean each year is expected to double or triple by 2040 and threaten all marine life. So climate change also driving accelerated biodiversity loss on land and underwater. About 70 to 90% of warm water coral reef will disappear even if the 1.5 degrees threshold is reached. They will die off completely at 2% level. So climate change also increases the frequency and intensity of wildfires around the globe. So declining ecosystem and biodiversity loss will affect nature-based services, threatening human health and our own very survival. Thank you.
Wow, so thank you very much for putting that one into context. So it's obviously not, thank you very much in the sense that it's not the greatest news, obviously. Tomasz, over to you. So I've been hearing that the UN Forum on Forests is supporting something called the Global Forest Goals. Can you tell us about those? How do they fit into this conversation?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here and talk about forests. As we all know, forest, and as it was just presented by Yongi forests are important for various reasons, for the planet, for societies, and they are at the core of the SDG 15, with covering just over 1/3 of the planet. They host over 80% of the terrestrial biodiversity. But forests are not only home to species. They actually offer us much more. We know that forests create jobs. They provide basically massive support to the environment, to the entire sustainable development agenda. And in that in mind, the global forest community came together, and in 2017 adopted United Nations strategic plan for forests. And the global forest goals are at the very core of the strategic plan. The plan was created with the mission to promote sustainable forest management and enhance contribution of forests to sustainable development. It brings together, it creates a framework for cooperation on forest-related issues among the UN agencies and other actors and stakeholders. And the mentioned global forest goals are there. They at the core of it. We have 6 global forest goals and 26 targets. They are quantitative, qualitative. Some of them are very concrete, very easily to measure. Others are more aspirational, a little bit more complicated. I will not read here all the global goals and targets. It's a dialogue, not a monologue. So I will just provide a very short snapshot just to give an idea what we're talking about. So Global Forest Goal 1 talks about the forest resources, and it has for example, one very concrete target that talks about increasing the forest cover globally by 3%. Global Forest 2 has people at its center. It refers to the forest contribution to food security, to eradication of poverty among forest-dependent people, talks about small businesses. Global Forest 3 talks about protected forest and the expansion of these areas. 4, we are discussing the financial resources for implementation of SFN. Global Forest 5 talks about governance issues and forest law enforcement, and in fact has some targets which are directly linked to integrating forests to sustainable development policies, strategies at the national level. And Global Forest 6 talks about partnership among the UN agencies and also at national levels. And of course, all these global forest goals and targets are being monitored. We have a reporting mechanism in place for member states. They're reporting to us on progress or lack of progress achieved under specific goals and targets. And they discuss at the session of the forum the main challenges related to implementation, the success stories that could be shared and with others. And from that discussion, we take different policy actions at the forum level. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomasz. So, Lucy, I want to bring in you now. You're from an organisation that seeks to put Indigenous viewpoints at the front and the centre of these conversations. So how is the knowledge of Indigenous persons unique, and how should the knowledge and information that we get from you be incorporated into the assessment that we're making on forests and the ocean?
Thank you very much, and I hope you can all hear me. Technology was a bit of a challenge a few minutes ago. Thank you very much for the question. I think I should actually say that it's very, very important that you bring that question of the knowledge and information from Indigenous people. And this is because mainly Indigenous people live in the land and they depend on everything that is, life on land. And at the same time, it's very important to note that, as already explained by the presenter on forest, is that we depend totally on the land in terms of looking at food, in terms of looking at the air that we breathe, and the life on land is crucial for us, even also in oceans, because that's where most of the indigenous people also depend to get their food, to get their water, to get everything that is around us, that is life, and even medicinal plants and so on. And this is why it's so important to bring in indigenous people. And it's also very important because when you look at indigenous people, for a long, long time, they've depended on that. They have their own traditional knowledge, which they have used to be able to protect biodiversity, to use it, and to be able also to look at it in a way that they can protect and sustain it for the future generation, because that's the way they have grown up seeing their parents going on and the great-grandparents. This is why for indigenous people also try to, as much as possible, to participate and bring this knowledge to share with the other, younger generation, and also to make sure that at least it's important for the world to know why this knowledge is very, very important. And for us to be able to succeed with the SDGs and to look at the Agenda 2030, we must involve indigenous people and local communities, women and youth, so that we can be able to be on the table to share this information and to see how we can succeed together. When we are doing on issues of environment, and especially biodiversity, and looking at the knowledge that we have, the forest areas, even if it's the dry areas, and even if it's
Oh dear, we are having a bit of a problem with the sound there. I will come back to you in a moment, Lucy. Yongi, if I come to you now, how would you recommend that we use all of the data and the information that we're getting to create some really good policies and a path forward, especially considering obviously the challenges of things like COVID-19 and war and of course climate change?
The data can directly direct the policy. Maybe let me give you an example. So one example from the South Atlantic uses satellite tracking data for 14 species of seabirds and seals to pinpoint breeding grounds and feeding sites crucial to the preservation of this and other species. So this information was used to revise the management of a marine protected area by extending the closure of fishery by 2 months and expanding several permanent non-fishery zones, which allow commercial fishing to occur in a regulated manner. So when monitoring the ocean, it's important to consider the high degree of connectivity that existed within the marine ecosystem and between marine and the terrestrial ecosystem. Most of the change in marine ecosystem are caused by activity on land. So for example, we just mentioned the nutrient runoff from agriculture is a main cause of eutrophication of coastal water, and the mismanaged plastic waste from coastal community often end up in the ocean. So we need integrated marine and terrestrial management system. So a source to sea approach can directly address the links between land, water, delta, coastal, and ocean ecosystem to support holistic nature resource management. Monitor financing for research and the sustainable ocean and forest management will also help preserve marine and terrestrial ecosystem and biodiversity. For example, data shows that on average, only 1.7% of national research budgets are allocated for ocean science. The main reason is because of most of the marine ecosystems are remote, vast in size, and difficult to access. And almost all countries, for example, adopt legislation in response to invasive alien species, but lack in funding for implementation. And we also say in the effort of building back from the pandemic, we also check the fiscal policies announced by government to see if they take this opportunity to integrate biodiversity consideration into the economic recovery measure to help build a more viable future. However, the recent OECD data from 43 countries showed only 17% of overall stimulus is related to green measures, and only estimate 7% of this support biodiversity. So this is the data directly checking the policy finance to preserve our natures.
I'm hoping Lucy is there. I'm hoping sure we can get Lucy back. If we can, Lucy, what was your view? What's your view of that? How do you want us? How would you recommend that we use this data? Oh dear, we may have lost Lucy for a bit. Okay, I'll move to you, Tomasz. So I wanted to ask you actually, what are some of the data-related challenges that we're hearing there when it comes to forests, and why is it so important that we overcome these?
Thank you. When it comes to forests, we actually have good forest data when it comes to the biophysical data. So the global forest assessment have been carried out since, I think, 1940s, and but they mostly focus on the traditional forestry aspects. So we're talking about cubic meters, hectares of forest, afforested and deforestation, etc., etc. But as we see, the expectation from forests are changing, and what we need right now and what are the main challenges are related to the socioeconomic data. This is linked to the jobs, for example, in forestry, which are very difficult and tricky to establish because forests by nature, it's in many parts of the world, it's a very informal sector. We do not have official statistics on that, or they are not taken into account. We need some methodologies on contribution of forests to food security. We're still working on the right way how to approach it. We need more research into the linkages between forest and poverty eradication. But most importantly, I think what is currently clear, what we need is to really basically have data that shows the full value of forest. My personal view is that the forests are drastically undervalued, the contribution of forests to society, to planet. If you look at the figures just related to GDPs, on average, it's just below even 1%. And this figure is really misleading because we all know as even not experts on forests, that forests provide us with so much. Yet they continue to be, we continue losing forests. And I think that the reason for that is simply because all the services, the biodiversity, the desertification, erosion, protection of water, they are not taken into account currently. And we continue to, in many parts of the world, forests are just still seen just for its timber. And actually the living organisms, the ecosystems are much more than alive, standing, then basically turned into logs and timbers. And we still have to provide evidence, have concrete figures. We have a lot of anecdotal data, and we received very interesting stories from member states. But as I mentioned, the services, the payments for ecosystem services, this kind of information is crucial really to save, to preserve forests. I think that once the full value of forests is recognized, we potentially stop losing them because it will be not any longer profitable to convert forests to agriculture, to pasture, to palm oil plantations or any other crops. It's really, we know that forests are, I think currently we have two ongoing crises. We're talking about climate change, we're still with COVID, and we know that forests offer solutions, or they could potentially become a huge problem if we continue our relationship with them the way currently is. The business as usual, I think it's not any longer possible. I think that so for that to change, it will really need a different approach to data gathering and collect data that really shows the full value of forests and their services. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it's an interesting point you raised there. When it's the people using the forest understand the financial imperative behind actually the benefit of it and using it that way, that's going to make the difference. Okay, thank you. So we are struggling to get Lucy back. So I'm going to ask some of the questions that the audience, have kind of been sending in. So we have a great question here from Eleni Lalani from Manila in the Philippines, and she says, what are the most effective policies in protecting biodiversity in areas of conflict? So I might come to you on that, Yongi. Is that something you could answer?
Yeah, this is actually a challenging question. We notice that actually there's some study find out like there's sharp increase in forest loss in most of the conflict affected country. And for example, in Democratic Republic of Congo, home to forests where the highest ecological and climate value, the highest number of people in urgent need of humanitarian assistance, there have been about 8% of increase in forest loss since 2019, and due to different reasons that directly and or either indirectly into the conflict. So this is, drivers are very diverse, and they have in common that they are allowed to flourish by weak institution environment. So it's very challenging and for conflict area to strengthen all this like institution environment on regulations, on protections. So I probably will hand over to my colleague Thomas to see if there's anything that we can do to see how we protect the biodiversity in the conflict areas.
Well, thank you. It's a very interesting question. I totally agree. I mean, what you just said, Yongi, it's when we're dealing with conflict in forests in particular, this area basically are totally off the. The forest staff cannot go there. Basically, there are many evidence that actually forests is a natural resource. So there are many conflicts actually that are fueled. The illegal timber logging is definitely increasing in that areas, and just like we know that sometimes the other oil or other natural resources fuel conflicts, it's a similar case with forests. There are many studies from countries that shows very concrete data that forests sometimes, once in conflict zones, can contribute further to escalation of conflict, etc. And regarding the solution, I think that's it's as I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's basically, since the forests are off limits to the staff, there is no law enforced. This is it's not much we can do until the situation is resolved.
Thank you. So there was a question that came in as well, which I guess you sort of mentioned the answer before last, Tomasz, which was, is there data on the benefits that investments in conserving biodiversity and especially forestry brings? And obviously there is some, you were saying we need more. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, they are, I mentioned briefly in my my former intervention, the payments for ecosystem services. And I think there are currently many countries and many cases of that shows very concrete benefits of conservation. I think Costa Rica is a good example. It is poster child. We have very good developed networks of payments for ecosystem services in Costa Rica. Those are, and it's not just the most common, which is of course for carbon, but they manage to bundle many different services: water protection, biodiversity, carbon, and ecotourism. And it's really, if you look at those figures, we're talking about billions of dollars annually that exceed that, if we were to manage those forests in the traditional way just for timber. So there are cases that are out there, and I think it's a matter of making this not any longer project success stories, tiny little anecdotal stories, but really mainstreaming those cases.
Okay, thank you. So what the next question we've got is, this is anonymous, this one, but is how can governments incentivize protection of biodiversity? In fact, that's not anonymous, it's from Jan Willem Lammens in New York. Do you want to answer that one, Yongi?
Sure. I mean, there's a direct link to our life. For example, I just mentioned for me, we see the coral reef is disappearing in front of our eyes, and we can still say it. What about our children and our grandchildren? So this is a big incentive. Also, linked to oceans. So in many countries, that if you go to the oceans and it's super polluted, and even it's beautiful, they're out there, but you cannot get into there. This is probably gave a lot of the local community an incentive to clean up the beach area and to pick up the garbage and plastic litters they have. And for government, there's a lot of economic benefits that protect our biodiversity and forests. And as I mentioned, that 30% of the fishing unsustainable, depleted. So we were no longer to have some of the fish in the future. So in order to still having the variety and also for our food security, we gave us a lot of incentive to protect the biodiversity of both our ocean and our forests.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a question here from Miriam Jallo, who's in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Could you highlight some of the challenges that are being faced in filling in the data gaps that you guys were talking about? Maybe come back to you on that one, Tomasz.
Sure. We, as I mentioned, we have good data, the traditional biophysical data. We work very closely with our colleagues at FAO from the Forest Resource Assessment Team. And when it comes to the gaps, I mean, the issues with data is on both sides. When it comes to forests, we have some issues still, as I mentioned, when it comes to the methodology, sometimes with definitions still. And on the other hand, of course, there is problem at the national level to gather this data and to access this data, to have this data. And what we're trying to do right now is to really develop, we work closely, as I mentioned, with a number of different partners to develop methodologies. We have some capacity building when it comes to countries at the national level to help them to really basically start slowly by one by one different elements that I mentioned. It's a long process, and I think currently, for example, in the very famous forest resource assessments, they are the data that the aspects of forest that I mentioned, the services, the socioeconomics, food security are not incorporated because they have very weak indicators. They are still tier 3 indicators, for which the data is either missing or methodology is missing. And we're working with various experts to basically, first of all, to fix those indicators, to agree on methodologies, and then basically with member states to make sure that they have this data. And I think, at the beginning, it's going to be difficult. It is difficult. We are, at UNFF, we collect mostly qualitative information. So it's not statistical, it's not whole yet, but I think that's the starting point. And once we have the methodologies in place and member states are more familiar with exactly looking for, then the whole machinery will start roll. But currently, as I said, it's work in progress. And I think the good thing is that, if there is any positive effect of this, of COVID, on the growing climate change, is the recognition of forests and their role how much we depend on them and how much they actually contribute to and provide solution to those issues. And we need this data. And as I said, this is work in progress.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. So we've got time for one more last question, which is, how do we make it more clear to more people this link between data, science and policy? Difficult to answer that one, but I think you might be able to answer that one. What can we do to kind of get it more into people's minds? Yongyi?
Yeah, I guess that it's really, we need to demonstrate the value of data and why we have to monitor this. I know, for example, I mentioned that marine research are very expensive, and because you need a very advanced technology and equipment and research vessel. Not a lot of countries have it, but people realize this increasing acidification that will cause severe damage to ocean. And as a result, I think I just look at some of the number we have. We have a big increase of observation station reporting the ocean acidification almost doubled in 1 year, from 2021, about 170 stations to about 300 stations. So this is people starting to realize the importance of the data and the value that for the policy making. And so they start invested in the data collection. And same, I think the one good example is bird watching. Like a lot of regular people participate. That they see the beautiful bird and they take pictures and they report this different type of bird voluntarily, which we call the citizen science data. That also contribute to the looking at the bird species and to help increase and protect them. So this is a lot of value that it's really related to our, everyone's life.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, this whole thing is related to our life, isn't it? And that's the way we need to be thinking of it. Thank you. So we're going to say thank you very much to Thomas and Yongyi, and obviously Lucy, who was able to join us for a little bit. And we're now going to turn to innovation, really, and focus even more on the way that partnerships for biodiversity and sustainable ocean and forest management can work. So before we do that, let's just take another quick poll on mobilising innovation and building new public-private partnerships for forest and the ocean. So the question for you is, what is to you the biggest benefit of partnership in biodiversity? Is it alignment of goals, efficient use of resources, getting local community involvement, respect for nature, or something else? So whilst you are voting, let me introduce our guests now. So we have joining us Yabanex Batista, who's the Deputy Head of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, the UN team, and they're based in Costa Rica, and Garrett Chan, Director of Strategy for Tea Leaves, which is a global company based in Canada, and they're also a participant at the SDG 15 expert group meeting. Robbie Robinson, who's the Field Operations Manager with the Buffalo Bio Partnership in Houston, Texas, in America, obviously, and David Rivers, a Field Operations Foreman, also with the Buffalo Bio. So welcome, gentlemen. And before we start talking, I will just have a very quick look back at the poll and see what everybody has been saying. So it never tells me unless I voted. So there we go. So alignment of goals and local community involvement are the most important things, according to everybody here. 33% for both of those each. So thank you very much, everybody, for getting involved and voting. We love seeing what you're thinking. Okay, let's start with you, Yaba Batista. Can you tell us about the Global Fund for Coral Reefs? What is it? What is it doing? How are you making a difference?
Thank you so much for the kind invitation to be here with you today. Really, truly a pleasure to share our experience. The Global Fund for Coral Reefs is quite a unique and innovative financial instrument that it's fully dedicated to building what we call reef positive solutions, reef positive business solutions particularly. And the way we work is through a blended finance approach. And what is blended finance? So blended finance basically means the use of grant money that can come from public sources or philanthropies to attract private sector investment to scale up, in our case, these reef positive business solutions, all with the aim of contributing to sustainable development. And the GFCR is actually the first UN, United Nations fund fully dedicated to financing SDG 14, and we were launched in 2020. And what we do, getting a little bit perhaps into the partnership topic, is that we with civil society, government, and private sector actors in the water to build programs that can actually pull together resources, again, from the grant side of things and the private sector to build these reef positive solutions that can include, for example, the creation of sustainable fishing practices, better sustainable agricultural practices, because agricultural runoff often is a serious threat to coral reefs. We are working with partners on building new sustainable financing mechanisms that can be linked to blue carbon schemes, so valuing carbon that comes from the ocean and exchanging that in voluntary markets. We are working with partners on creating reef insurance schemes that can help safeguard and help reefs be reconstructed after catastrophic damages, for example, from hurricanes. So I think with that, just to keep it short for the moment, that's a little bit of a flavor of what the Global Fund for Coral Reef does. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yaba. So if I move to you now, Garrett, tell us about tea leaves and how a tea company that you're running can support sustainable farming and how you are good for the planet.
Thank you. I want to start off by saying that we're really honored to have this opportunity to talk about some of the projects we're working on. I wrote out some brief notes so that way I could get through them quick, because I'm known to be long-winded. Right now, we're working with a kind of very wide array of diverse partners, and what we're trying to solve is how do we co-create a new so-called aspirational lifestyle. So we understand that humans always kind of coalesce around this idea of the ideal lifestyle, oftentimes built around status and sometimes really conspicuous consumption. The question before us, I think, is can we, with a wide variety of partners, frame a new one that is biodiversity positive, one that is nature positive. So, trying to create this kind of substantive behavioral change in terms of consumption, we feel might be one of the ways that we can contribute to, I guess, mainstreaming biodiversity. So I'm going to talk really briefly about 3 projects. One of them is this goji berry project that we're working on with Margot Clavier at the Turjur charity in Nepal, where we're trying to basically create the new version of Manuka honey, but using ingredients that are that have strong social impact benefits. The second one is we're working on a chamomile project that is going to be largely disseminated through our luxury hotel partners. And basically in that situation as well, really allow consumers to understand that they can partake of products that have wide social impact and still also create this new idea of the aspirational lifestyle. And then the third one is we're working on a project with Pantone Color that is looking at basically a fun, cool project largely built around social media. Pantone is such a great, iconic design brand that really draws attention to the problems that we're seeing in biodiversity loss today. So maybe I'll just leave it there and stop. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all those. It sounds interesting. I'm interested in the idea of the goji honey. Thank you. So I'm going to turn to you now, Robbie and David, and tell us, we'd love to hear about what is the Buffalo Bio. It sounds such an amazing name. And what is your partnership? And maybe I'll start with you, Robbie.
So Buffalo Bayou is a bayou is basically a slow-moving river, and Buffalo Bayou is the river that runs, or bayou that runs through the middle of downtown Houston, and it's the reason Houston is even a city. Houston was built on and around, around the bayou. And so Buffalo Bayou Partnership, we're a nonprofit organization And our mission statement is the revitalization and transformation of Buffalo Bayou. And we do this through a coalition of a lot of different partners. And David and I run the Clean and Green program, which is just a small part of what Buffalo Bayou does. And we collect trash on the bayou. We try to keep the bayou clean.
Thank you. Okay, so David, you're one of the guys who goes out on the boats every day on the bayou. And what is the trash, or as we like to say here in the UK, what is the rubbish that you are finding, and why are you motivated to get it out of the bayou? What's the impact it's having?
Okay, well, I'm David Rivers, and I'm also known as Bayou Dave. And really, I became interested in the cleanup because of the ocean. I saw, the Pacific trash dump. And when I saw the Pacific trash dump and the fish that were affected, how the water was affected, microplastics and all that, I knew that we had to do something at home first. I believe that it starts at home. And the Clean and Green project is awesome because we are biodiversity. We believe that, the fish, the birds, the trees, the land around us is all affected by human interaction and the pollution that's brought into the ecosystem. And so when I'm out cleaning up on the biovac, we find everything. We find chairs, a mattress, buckets, coolers, plastic. You name it, we find it on the bayou. So that's why we're dedicated to cleaning up on the bayou, and bayou management is what I call it. And so we go out and we even eradicate invasive species of plant. We've seen how having the wrong type of plants also affects the ecosystem, because now the animals that rely on those plants don't have them. So we've been trying to come in and do maintenance on the bayou so that we can get it before it hits our oceans.
Thank you, David. And Bio Dave, as you say, they were with a brilliant surname of David Rivers. Obviously, the irony not lost on me there. It took a while for me to get it, though. Thank you so much. Obviously, what we're talking about now, though, of course, is partnerships. So I want to really make clear now these interlinkages between SDG 14 for the ocean, SDG 15 for the forests, and now with SDG 17 for the partnership. So maybe I'm going to go around you all and get you to share how these partnerships actually fit into what you're doing in your jobs. So I will start with Yapa.
Thank you. I think this is such an important topic to talk about partnerships within the context of both SDG 14 and 15. In our case, the GFCR was the Global Fund for Coral Reefs was truly born out of a partnership. Back in 2018, the International Coral Reef Initiative, the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation, the Prince Albert of Monaco Foundation, and 3 UN agencies, UNDP, UNEP, and UNCDF, really worked together to come up with the concept of what the Global Fund for Coral Reefs should do within this area of blended financing that I was describing before. And as a result of that initial set of conversations, they all realized, and this was seconded by ICRI publicly, that we needed to have a global fund for coral reefs with this particular approach, because coral reefs are being degraded rapidly. They are going to potentially, 90% of coral reefs are potentially going to disappear in the next 30 years. We don't have enough funding to really conserve coral reefs in the next 10 years, and they are vital for human beings and for the planet in terms of survival and livelihoods and economic benefits. So when we are being challenged by such a threat like we have right now with coral reefs related to climate change, the threat related to climate change and coral reef disappearance, we need partnerships to solve those challenges. We cannot do it alone. And since 2018, after these first sets of minds got together to ideate the GFCR, other partners have come to the fold, and we now have an amazing coalition which supports both ends of the GFCR, the grant funding side, and our grant fund, which is based in the United Nations, and then the investment fund, which is our anchor instrument right now, managed by one of our partners, Pegasus Capital Advisor, to help attract equity investors into reef positive businesses. So now in our grant fund, we count with the support of the governments of Germany, of France, of the United Kingdom, very soon the government of Canada. We're working also with additional philanthropies that are going to be joining very soon the coalition. We are working with the Green Climate Fund, who is supporting Pegasus Capital Advisors in the investment fund. And this is just the coalition at the global level that it's being built. At the same time that we have been building this coalition globally, all of our programs in the water at the country level are creating also partnerships to design and to then implement the Global Fund for Coral Reefs programs. And this includes non-governmental organizations. So all of our programs in the water are led by either a UN agency or an environmental organization, and they have a key task, which is to build the coalition at the program level. And this always includes government, additional actors from civil society, including the academia and research, and also local private sector. And so we in the GFCR really take at heart the role of partnerships, and we are working on building those at that two-level stage, globally and nationally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yaba. So I'm going to come to you now, Garrett. How is it working with you? How are partnerships fitting into what you guys do?
That's probably the most exciting things that I do on a day-to-day basis. I think in collaboration and partnerships, we look to four kind of key stakeholder kind of groups. The first is definitely design. Well, actually, the first is really where does the brief come from? And for us, the brief comes from public sector, from perhaps UN, and definitely SDGs. So we start off with that. So that's where kind of like the questions and the intractable problems are presented. But then I think the four collaboration partners that we're particularly interested are, one, always design and designers. You know, designers are very similar and akin to the second group, which is kind of where we're classified as, is makers. Between designers and makers, you know, we basically are creating the problem, and we also have to create the solution. We're creating the products that people are buying, and we need to reframe and reshift, you know, how that consumption takes place. So it's a little bit more conscious, a little bit more meaningful, and of course, most importantly, biodiversity positive. The third kind of collaboration partners we have are people who are really, really good at branding. And branding, we basically see is understanding what the human psychology is, what human beings want, and then delivering that oftentimes through kind of what immersive experiences. So I would say that collaboration to us is where we see the future, where we see the hope. You know, it allows us to quickly iterate solutions, and you really have a broad coalition of people who really want to help solve the problem, and they all approach it from their different and disparate lenses. Maybe I'll stop there. Thank you.
I love the way you're all being very good and in control of how much you say. It's very grown up of you and making my job easier. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to come to you now, Robbie and David. How are partnerships fitting in with what you guys do?
Well, Buffalo Bayou is partnership is our name, and we are truly a coalition of partners. Buffalo Bayou partnership came about because there were several entities or stakeholders wanting to do stuff on Buffalo Bayou, but there was no coordinated effort. And so in the mid 80s or early 80s, they formed Buffalo Bayou Partnership to have this coordinated effort for the Bayou, and it's had phenomenal results. We have built a huge park downtown. We are now focused from eastward from downtown, and there's some tremendous plans in place for that, and we are truly a partnership of city, county, foundations, individuals on the big level, on the big partnership, and even with our Clean and Green program, which David and I work under. We are a coalition of partners with Harris County Flood Control System, the Port of Houston, some foundations, some individuals contribute to us. And unfortunately, we are also partners in the reason that we have to do what we do, because we're partners with the whole city and the whole county that contributes to our problem, and that's the trash on our city streets. And the only way to get rid of this is not through cleaning up, which we do, but we need to partner with the government. The government needs to partner with us, and we need a bottle bill. That 10 states already have this bottle bill. It needs to be a worldwide bottle bill. And a bottle bill is basically a deposit on these plastic bottles, cans, glass bottles, and it gives this what we call floatables, what you call rubbish or trash, and it gives it value. And if it has value, it comes out of our rivers and goes back into the recycling chain. And that's the only way to do it. Cleaning it up is not the way to do it, but putting it back in the recycling chain would be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And obviously there are places in the world that do it and very successfully. Thank you, Robbie, sorry. And now I'm going to come with another question, really. Garrett, you're head of a business. So how do you think we can encourage more investment of time and resources into, obviously in your case, forest management?
Yeah, that's a real hard problem, I think, to solve. I think I'll be brief in saying that I don't know. I mean, I think, one of the solutions to try has to be consumer led. That we as a business, we're creating products that are consumed, and the consumer ultimately holds all the power for us. They dictate what they like, what they don't like, and we iterate and we redesign as a response, largely a reflective response to what the consumer demands. So I would, and this I guess alludes to the projects we're working on. We're really interested in how you have consumer leadership. And in order to have consumer leadership, you need to, we feel, create this new kind of aspirational lifestyle for consumers. And then consumers have to demand that and then want that from the people that are making them stuff. So maybe I think I'll just stop there. That would be kind of as good as an answer as I can provide. Thank you.
No, that's fair enough. Thank you very much. Okay, Yaba, what about you? How do you think we could encourage more investment in, say, coral reefs?
Well, that's actually what we are literally trying to do with the GFCR. One of the things that in the overall conservation community, I think we have come to realize in recent years is that we are not going to accomplish what we need to accomplish in terms of global conservation just using grant money. Grant money, it's going to be essential and we're always going to need it, but we need to be able to bring more private sector investment into the picture. And we also need to start redirecting negative subsidies for the environment towards things that become then positive subsidies for the environment. And I think that's what we are aiming to do by using grant money in a different way. Often the private sector or sometimes governments, they feel that, and this is actually real, they don't feel that there are barriers for them to come into the market, for them to come into these kinds of investments. And grant resources can be used to de-risk and incubate new ideas that can then be scaled up, particularly by private sector actors. And I think if we partner with the private sector actor in a way in which we can help them feel more comfortable, feel less risk into coming into new markets, into embracing new ideas that provide, yes, economic return, but that are positive for nature, and in our case, positive for reefs, I think that's going to be a key way in which we are going to attract them. Because when we engage with different actors in the private sector world, they want to be part of the solutions. They want to invest in new ideas, in revenue making businesses and mechanisms that are positive with nature and that help people as well. But at the end of the day, they are also the private sector, and they are also part of our wider economic system. So we need to create these new cycles, these new economic cycles that also provide financial returns that can then benefit people and benefit nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Yaba. Okay, so I'm going to come to you, Robert and David. What are the kinds of resources, the support that would be really helpful to you in your work? What do you want governments and companies and individuals, for instance, to do, apart from obviously stop throwing stuff away, but what could help you?
Well, I think awareness is the biggest issue. A lot of people don't know what's going on out there. They don't realize collectively how the trash accumulates, and it ends up being the Pacific trash dump. And so I feel if people start, cleaning the area up, maybe adopting the area, if they start recycling, and recycling by itself isn't good enough, because on the recycling part, it's a lot of dirty trash, and a lot of it ends up in our waterways. And other countries get it and say they can't use it. That's why I back what Robbie said about the bottle bill, because people would get it before it gets dirty. People would turn it in before it gets dirty, and it could be used and recycled easy. We also have days that people come out and volunteer, because like I said, awareness, and people are always surprised and shocked when they get out there and see all the trash, and they want to know where it comes from, and they're always they always want to do something about the problem. So I feel the biggest issue is making sure people is aware. And my slogan is save the world. And so that's great that we're here right now, because the whole world gets a chance to see what we do and see that we're active in biodiversity, because we are trying to save the animals and save the forest and save the water. And we see that it's a direct impact from pollution. We see the impact of it. And now that we've been cleaning up on the bayous, we're seeing more osprey, which feed off the water. We're seeing more snakes. It's more fish coming back. And the only thing that hurts us are the storms. Every time we get a storm, we have to start over again. So again, I feel the biggest issue is just awareness, making sure people are aware.
Thank you so much. So, okay, so there's David talking, or Dave there, talking about what they need from individuals. If I come to you, Robbie, like when it comes to, say, the government or companies that you could be working with, what would you like? If I gave you a magic wand, what would you like?
Well, we could always use more money. Being a nonprofit, we're at the mercy of generosity from individuals and corporations, and from grants from different county organizations, county funding. And we could always use more funding. We're understaffed. We take care of a 14-mile stretch of Buffalo Bayou with 6 people, and we could definitely use more funding. And there again, if we had some type of bottle bill where there was a deposit coming on these bottles, and it would generate revenue, and it's another way that we could fund the cleanup and the education to make people aware, like David's saying, because it's not people. All the trash worldwide is not people really wanting to litter. It's just carelessness and ease of getting, just throwing the stuff down instead of recycling.
Thank you. It's been so great hearing from all of you guys about the different projects that you're involved in. So I'm going to take some questions from the audience now. So we've got quite a lot coming in. Here's a lovely one, which sort of speaks to what you were just talking about there, David. How can youth organizations become involved in the efforts to protect biodiversity? So David was talking about the impact of individuals and how they could help. What about, with the coral reefs, for example, what could they be doing? What could be happening? Yaba.
I thought the question was for David, but yes, youth engagement basically is the question. I think we all know that everything that we are addressing today in terms of environment, making sure that we have the ecosystem services that we need to live to continue to provide those services for the future, is because we want our current youth to have a better future, to have a future. And I think that if we don't incorporate them from the beginning on building any kind of solution related to environmental degradation, we are doing a disservice to humankind. So from our end, all of our programs, actually, particularly when we talk about the civil society engagement, our partners are always looking at incorporating youth in different ways in the design of the programs, but also the implementation. And I think this is quite important, because often, I mean, hearing the voices of the youth, it is definitely crucial. But I think it's even more crucial to bring those really bright minds into the design processes for the environmental solutions that we want to build for the future. They have great ideas always. Those of us that are getting older, our brains are getting a little bit rusty already. So we need to make sure that we bring those fresh new ideas with us, to make sure that we're building the future that they want.
Brilliant, thank you. Wow, some all wonderful different questions coming in here. If I go into a forest one, I mean, again, we've had another one about the youth be partners in it. So what are the agrarian reforms that could help protect forests? This is from Eva Benita Tuzon in the Philippines. Is that something that you could speak to, Garrett?
Oh, maybe not. Can I pass on that?
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
There's some highly detailed questions coming in here. What's the way to coordinate conservation and renewable forests with the benefits of mass timber construction? I'm not sure, again, these are kind of quite deep conversations that might need a sort of more experts in those specific fields to talk on. Some of the most popular ones coming through at the moment was the youth one. What else have we got? One's on SDGs. Ooh. What's interesting is, obviously we talked about how you guys are moving things forward in partnerships and so on. What was the impact maybe of COVID-19 on the work that you were doing? I wonder if any of you could talk to that. It would be interesting to see, particularly for you there, David. You're nodding at me, but I can imagine that had quite an impact for you guys, because people were not using, or maybe overusing, the bayou during that time.
Right. Well, I really didn't notice until later, because I kept wondering why the numbers were so low and I wasn't finding trash. And later, I was talking to a group of people, and I said things changed after COVID. When COVID hit us, people stopped going out. When they stopped going out and going to restaurants, they stopped littering. And the bayou became a place where I had to start hunting for trash again. I had to go in the woods and look for trash, because it just wasn't coming through our system. And we already know that the trash sits in the drains. So when we get a good rain, we call it a flush, we get a chance to see all that trash come down the river. And during COVID, it just didn't happen. So it shows us that we are directly affected by what people do on a daily basis. If we can get people to change their habits and to stop throwing away, do more recycling, and watch what happens to their trash, I believe we could actually clean up not only our city, but we could actually clean up the world. It's just getting people to change their habits.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Does anybody else want to come in on that? Did anyone notice any difference, or just on their work or on how they're doing things through COVID?
I'm happy to jump in here, Claire. In our case, and in the world of coral reefs, when you look at the coral reef ecosystems, the countries that harbor these ecosystems are countries that are also very highly dependent on tourism for their economies. So when the COVID pandemic hit, we all know that tourism numbers went down significantly. And this had a very serious impact on the livelihoods of the people that depend on this ecosystem. And one of the areas that we have had to rework in our strategy is how we can now as we continue to design and implement new programs related to blended finance approaches for building reef positive businesses, how we can build additional resilience to help local economies and local communities weather better future shocks like COVID. Because this may happen or will happen again at some point, and we do have a real life experience now that we can use as a basis to create even more resilient economic and social solutions for the people that depend on these ecosystems. So that was a key impact that we saw, and for us this is key because if people way of living is affected in this case because revenue is not coming in from tourism, they are going to have to rely on something else. And what we want to avoid is for people and economies to then rely on unsustainable practices as related to natural resources extraction and use. So we need to be very conscious of this. And this is a crisis, the COVID crisis is a crisis that is just compounding what we already know is happening with the climate change crisis and the biodiversity loss crisis. So at least for us in the conservation world, we actually have had to re-engineer a lot of our thinking in terms of how are we going to do better policies for the environment, better project design, better project implementation, to be able to address these three crises that we are currently managing.
Thank you very much. Well, we've got a great question here, which is going to dig out of all of you something there. What are the most defining events from your personal life that have encouraged you to do the work that you're doing? That was from Cara Eubanks, who's in Miramar, USA. I love that. It's going to get it out of you. So what about you, Robbie? What's the most defining event in your personal life that got you involved in this?
I can't say that there's one defining event, really. Growing up as a small child, I grew up in the middle of the woods, basically in a small town, and then was in the boat business for several years and have been on the water. And it was just it's kind of a love of being on the water, and it just it's just a shame what we're doing to our waterways. We're just slowly destroying our waterways and the ecosystem, and so it's just I don't know how to phrase it really. It's just a total thing of life of being on the water and loving the water.
No, I love that. So it's your love of the water that's got you involved here. What about you, Garrett? What's defined, what's got you doing what you do?
I think two things. There's a carrot and there's a stick. The stick probably came about, our CEO was speaking at the first inaugural World Biodiversity Forum in Davos. This is really just before COVID, alongside her friends from WHO and Johns Hopkins and BGCI and UBC Botanical Gardens and Kew Gardens. And the topic then was the impact of biodiversity loss might lead to, basically what we had, COVID, viruses that basically sprang from the result of our encroachment upon biodiversity. So that was the stick. That really, I think, shocked us. We were all in Davos debating whether we should just, skip the talk, all fly home or not. Barely made it through, before the shutdowns. And then I think that the carrot is that, with kind of like the Zoom meets and with virtual, there's a reframing of the way that people work together, the way that they collaborate. And one of the things that has been great about virtual is that we're able to do this. We're all in different cities, different countries of the world, able to participate in a conversation that can be very agile, very quick, substantively strong, and also fun, and it doesn't take a lot of effort or time. So we found that the ability to work with more disparate partners has grown exponentially as a result of I guess, the terribleness of COVID.
Love it. Thank you very much. What about you, Yaba? Has there been a defining personal moment that encouraged you into the work you're doing, or was it a sort of slower burn like with Robbie?
I think in some ways it was a slow burn. I was born and raised in front of the ocean, but there was one time in my life where I actually realized why the water and the ocean was my passion, and it was I lived part of my life in Washington D.C. and when I moved to Washington D.C. I felt like I didn't fit in. Like there was something that I was missing in my life. And I was walking by the Potomac River once. For those of you that know, that river runs through Washington D.C. And I realized that it was like an aha moment. I was like, "That's it! I am missing the water," because every other time in my life, I had been sitting and living right in front of the water, and it gave me energy and it gave me passion. And and once I realized that in DC, then I went to the river as much as I could to see the water and relax and draw energy from it.
Love it. And last but not least, what gets you involved in what you're doing? What you, David? What's the thing that got you doing what you're doing now? What was the push for you?
Well, I was in environmental, and we did emergency response and hazmat, and I was cleaning up an oil spill. And when we got to the oil spill, it was impossible to clean it up because of all the trash. So we had to connect booms together in order to pull all the trash together, and then get cherry pickers and dumpsters with liners to get all the trash out of the water, just so we could clean the oil spill that we were initially there for. And so I started asking questions. I was like, well, what about this trash? No one's cleaning the trash. And all the companies would say, no one is going to pay for it. So if no one's paying for it, they didn't even care about the trash. And so that was concerning to me. And from that point on, I've been determined to bring more awareness. That's why I make so many videos all the time, because I realize the rest of the world don't see this. And since they don't see it, out of sight, out of mind. But that was the defining moment for me, when I saw all that trash and nobody cared.
It's lovely. You painted a really good picture for us there of that. I really enjoyed it. And I think the other question we have, and again, it's not like, it's again a bit more on that personal nature, which I love. And you mentioned a little bit of that there, Yaba. So Lars Bassett in Germany, he says, how much does a personal connection to nature matter to raise awareness of biodiversity? And obviously it was interestingly big telling for you two, Yaba, and for Robbie. But maybe if we sort of put it into, I don't know, an education setting, Garrett, how important is it, and how can we do it in your work? How do you do it?
Yeah, mine would be brief. I mean, wellness for you, wellness for us is wellness for the planet. They're inextricably linked. I think that's where I would leave it. You can't separate two halves of the same coin.
No, absolutely. Yeah, but what about you?
I think as beings, we are naturally drawn to nature, and making that part of our upbringing and education from day one is going to be a huge part of the solution. It's something that it's hard to measure when you look at it from a scientific point of view, but really embedding nature and for kids to learn what are all these like ecosystem services, and what is it that protected areas do for them? Where does water really come from? It's not from the faucet. All those things are crucial for changing the mindset of human beings, and the time to do that is when they are growing up. So we need to make sure that we don't miss that in this path that we are taking or trying to correct, to ensure a future for humankind in this planet. And maybe related to that, as we were talking about partnerships, I think one of the things that is essential in this process is that we often think that we need to focus on our task to get something done. But if we only do that, we're missing at least half of the picture, because we're not seeing what others are doing. And by seeing what others are doing, we get new ideas. And those we say, hey, no, let's work together. Let's see what we can do together. It is also part of our nature to help and to work together. And I think for me, that's the other part of this awareness raising aspect, that we're naturally drawn to doing things together. We are a social animal, right? So, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And that's what we've been doing today as well. So I'll leave the last word on that one with you, Robbie and David. You can fight it out for who wants to answer, I guess. How much does the personal connection to nature matter to raise awareness of biodiversity?
Well, I think it matters a lot. I think it's everything. We were talking about youth, earlier. And that's one thing that kind of bothers me, that a lot of youth are just disconnected from nature today, especially inner city youth. I mean, they come out and they've never been in nature, and they don't realize the interconnection of the ecosystem and mankind. As the ecosystem goes, so does mankind, and we're part of it, and we're destroying it. And if it gets destroyed, we're destroying ourselves. And so I think that education, that the school programs, they need to bring nature into the curriculum in schools and make kids aware of nature.
Thank you. Well, perfectly said. And we're coming really to an end to today's event. So thank you to all of you, to the panelists in that discussion and in the previous one, for sharing your insights, your expertise. Some challenging questions from the audience there, and I love getting that personal element and angle from you guys as well, so that we could really understand what drives you to do what you do. So those of you who are watching on Zoom right now, you'll see an exit survey pop up when you leave the meeting. It would be great if you could just spare a couple of minutes to fill it in. We love getting your feedback. UN DESA will be back with another global policy dialogue in July, and then experts will be presenting the latest data on global population, and that's going to be released in the forthcoming World Population Prospects Report. And you can bookmark www.un.org/DESA to stay updated on those details. Meanwhile, make sure you check out the new SDG report, which is going to be released on July the 7th. And obviously, you can also get that at un.org/DESA. So that leaves me to thank you all again one more time, and of course to the organisers, UN DESA, and wish everybody, wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, a great rest of the day. Goodbye.
Goodbye.